Well, thank you again for joining us this morning. As I mentioned, we are recording today for those who couldn't make it, and for those of you that might want to play back any portion of this. But we're excited to share some information with you today about Chapin Hall's Equity First Summer Associates program. Um, Next slide. So, I am Christine Andrews. I will be the director of this program. So, I thought we'd get started with a little bit of intro of who I am. Um, Super briefly, I have a master's as a marriage and family therapist and a PhD in family and child ecology from Michigan State University. I own my own consulting practice called Ideas to Impact, and in that capacity, do research, evaluation, program implementation, training, technical assistance, um, all surrounding children, youth, and families. My always bringing a culturally responsive and racial equity perspective to all of the work that I do. My affiliation with Chapin Hall is as an Equity First Fellow. So, in that capacity, I serve to support some internal initiatives, thinking about what are the racial equity principles that we want to espouse as an organization, and how are we, living out those values in our work. And I've also had opportunities to work and consult on project and client specific work and making sure, again, that we are centering equity in the projects that we do, both in the outcomes that we're trying to get to, but also in just how we do the work, the process. So, in that capacity, I've been working with Chapin Hall for about 2 years. And I'm excited to be launching this inaugural cohort of the Equity First Summer Associates program that we will talk a little bit more about next. All right, so that's me. I wanted to also give you brief history on Chapin Hall as an organization, in case you're just not that familiar with it. Um, so we were founded to address a need for families. In 1865, the doors were open to be a facility to care for children with working mothers. So we're really trying to fill a need from the moment the doors open. Then fast forwarding to 120 years later, um, this organization was kind of reconstituted as a research organization and affiliated with the University of Chicago. And then there are some pivotal moments in throughout the course that I'm just going to highlight briefly, about three of them that really are integral into thinking about our mission, focus, kind of our core areas of interest at Chapin Hall. So in 2011, pointing out this study of adult functioning of former foster youth. And this study really launched interest in saying we really need to think about more supports for the youth aging out of foster care. And so that really became a hallmark as we thought about our work at Chapin Hall and thinking, well, foster care and child welfare is something we want to think and center. Advancing forward in 2013, Brian Samuels, who is the current executive director, joined the organization. And with him, he brought focus on policy. We were doing research as a research institution, but he said, if we really want to make this research be practical application and make change, we need to be thinking about policy. So bringing in a policy arm came when Brian the helm of the organization in 2013. A few more milestone moments for us. In 2017, this Voices of Youth Count um, was an initiative that really made us think from a national perspective. Our policy and practice changed to focus on addressing youth homelessness, right? So when we think about the core areas of Chapin Hall, we're thinking about kind of that child welfare and foster care, but we're also thinking about addressing youth homelessness. And then in 2021, this Family First collaboration um, pushed the impetus of saying, what are we doing to decrease the use of long-term foster care? So as I go forward and talk a little bit about just what are some of the hallmarks and the content focus of Chapin Hall, you'll hear these areas coming up because these are the kind of content areas that are our focus. And I think we've had a couple of folks join us. I'm sorry for not welcoming you. Welcome to the group. Anyone who just came, I'm sorry I didn't see you to begin. All right. So, as I mentioned, we have these three big impact areas. Um, Addressing the overrepresentation of communities of color in the child welfare system and eliminating the need for long-term foster care, ending youth homelessness, and strengthening families by building community capacity. So the way that we work as a research and policy center is really in an applied approach, working alongside the nonprofits and the government partners to make sure that we are centering equity in systems, that we're thinking about scaling evidence-based policies, right? How do we grow these? And then elevating community-driven solutions, solutions that were for communities by communities. How do we elevate those? So as I mentioned, Chapin Hall was founded to address an inequity, right? So when we thought about the Summer Associates program and why do we need such a thing, it's because we know that centuries of racially biased laws and policies and practices have resulted in inequitable treatments and perpetuated ongoing trauma in communities of color. So we wanted to think about a program that would focus on addressing systemic inequities. This isn't new to Chapin Hall, as I showed you in the history. We have always been thinking about inequities. We've always been thinking about child and family well-being and how do we provide evidence to address those inequities. So it's not the kind of the new and trendy thing to think about equity at Chapin Hall, but its focus for the Summer Associates program is around intentionally centering that in our work. We also think it's important to have a program like this because we know that who is doing the research matters, right? It People are bringing their life experiences, their perspectives to the work, and that shapes the research questions. It shapes how and from whom the data is collected. It matters because it determines how data is analyzed, how it's used, and even how findings are framed and how they are disseminated. So the who is doing the research matters. So again, thinking about a summer associates program to build capacity of the who is doing the research. We know that communities most impacted um, by the work that we are doing benefit from researchers with diverse lived experiences. Researchers with diverse lived experiences have an obligation to use data and evidence responsibly to inform an understanding of inequities, to bring light to the assets of marginalized communities, and to build new policies that promote family and community resilience. And finally, this program exists because we want to remind folks that career in academia is not your only option when you have a PhD. It's intentional. This program is to reach people like me who went and got a PhD, did not think that the road to the academy was my best road. So we want to also open possibility of what would it look like to take this PhD and use it in an applied approach, right? So that we can think about creating system transformation. We can think about practice and policy change outside of the halls of the university, right? So this program exists because quite honestly, it appeals to people like me who thought that a PhD meant I had to work in academia. We want to kind of dispel that and show you options. So, moving forward, let me talk a little bit about how the program is going to be structured. So, it is a 6-week summer program, and it's going to be delivered in a hybrid approach, right? Meaning some virtual, some in person, some structured, some unstructured work. In the structured part of the time, we know that we're definitely going to have meeting times where we have to just deliver content, right? We're talking about building your capacity and allowing you to understand not just these principles around how to do racial equity in your research and your practice and in your policies, but we want you to learn that content from myself as one of the facilitators and having guest speakers. And this is just the knowledge building component, right? We also want to encourage kind of peer learning opportunities and having meetings as a cohort, right? So intentionally not just having one summer associate, we're having a cohort. And so we also want to make sure that we have structured time where the cohort gets together and does activities to kind of have peer learning and peer growing. And then we want to have one-on-one time because you are going to be receiving a lot of content. You are going to be asked to put to application. We want to make sure that we make available a weekly time where it's just the two of us talking through. Maybe you have questions about what you're learning. Maybe you want to reflect and you have things you want to push, but we are expecting us to develop our own individualized personal equity plans at the end of this program. And that is my action plan that says, after I've done it my 6 weeks, what am I going to do in my work specifically that's going to help me to continue to advance equity, right? This isn't 6 weeks and we're done. What are you going to continue to do? So part of that one-on-one time will allow us to really flesh out your personalized equity plan. So that's kind of the structured every week. We're going to have meetings to do those things. But then there's a bunch of time that's unstructured, right? We know that we'll be giving you kind of independent readings to do. There's a lot of seminal articles that are really important to understanding this work. So we want to know in your own time, as you see fit, you'll have readings to do. You might be asked to watch a video. You'll be asked to reflect on some of the videos or the readings that you've done. You might be given activities or exercises that are thinking about self reflection and where you bring yourself into the work, right? So that's independent study on your own time. Your participation is key to this program working at all, right? So it's not kind of a sit back and just get this content. There is applied exercises that we are going to be asking you to do, right? We want you to put that learning into action with exercises and activities outside of our structured time together. And similarly, there are several videos that you'll be asked to watch and reflect on. So your participation is key to your growth and learning in this process. And then there's going to be just that kind of processing and journaling that we talked about. You'll have a separate reflection journal to kind of keep track of all of the exercises and learnings that you're doing. And then this personalized equity action plan that you're going to leave with that we'll be developing over the 6 weeks, right? That's really a culmination of what you've learned and where you personally are taking it after this. Okay. Please pop in if you have questions, but I promise I'll allow space for that at the end as well. Just opening my chat to make sure I didn't miss anything. So 6 week hybrid model, approximately 30 hours of a commitment. And many of those hours are that unstructured time. But we do think that's about the number of hours it's going to take to kind of complete the assignments and do the external work as well as the structured meeting times. We are going to meet starting June 10th for 3 weeks, and then we're taking a break for a week. That's that 4th of July holiday week. We figure people would need a break. People might have vacation planned. And so we want to just be thoughtful about having a actual pause in our work for that week. And then the last 3 weeks will take us through July 25th. There are two in-person required sessions. It'll be kind of like a 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. day. in person. Um, the June 10th one is the first day. It's a kind of a kickoff orientation. We'll be doing some introductory activities, some cohort building, some primer on the content, right? So we will spend that first day just kind of meeting each other and getting the work kicked off and started. And then the rest of the week will continue. We'll have the next 2 weeks, we'll take our pause, and then the final 3 weeks. And the final day is actually Thursday. It's not a Friday, but Thursday, July 25th. And that's again an in-person culminating day where we're going to, of course, celebrate our learnings, do some reflections, but then it's also going to be an opportunity to present your personal equity plan that you've been working on so that we can know where we're going after you guys have made relationships with one another. So let's talk about what's next for you. How do we hold each other accountable as a peer group? So that's kind of the what we're planning for the 6 weeks. I saw someone ask about the way the hours are broken up. Let me see. How many hours per week of structured time will there be? So the kind of lecture content delivery is like 2 hour Zoom call. Um, then you will have the 1 hour for your one-on-one, and then probably another 2 hours for your cohort course. There may be a week when we have a guest speaker that we may add a third hour to that content delivery. Um, so I would plan on about 6.5 hours of in-person, I mean, of structured, um, regular recurring call time. Okay. All right. So you may be thinking, what are we going to do? What are we learning in all of that time together? So just wanted to pop in a few bullets of some of the content we'll be covering. First, we want to talk about why are we even doing this? Like historically, what is the context for the importance of doing our work with this kind of racial equity perspective? I also want to talk about the value proposition. How do you make the case to others that this work is important, right? You're here because potentially you think this is important already, but you're often going to be in rooms, talking to funders, talking to clients that don't really understand the why we're pushing the importance of integrating racial equity into our work. And so we definitely want to make sure you lead with all of the language to really justify and explain the value of doing our work this way. We want to talk about how do you embed racial equity across all the stages of a research study, all the stages of an evaluation. So everything from how do I um, come up with my research questions to um, deciding my data collection methods to thinking about how do I analyze this data to thinking about the dissemination stage, right? So thinking about each stage of doing a study, how do I specifically think about racial equity when I'm there? Sometimes you're not doing a project from beginning to end, and you come in and they're already analyzing data. You want to be able to still know that it's not too late. And what are the ways that I can be embedding racial equity right here at the analysis stage or right here at the dissemination stage? So, you want to walk you through just kind of that practical tools to use, questions to ask yourself, depending on where you might be in a research study to make sure that we are embedding racial equity. We're going to have to do some unlearning, right? In these 6 weeks, we're going to have to think differently about what does it mean to have rigor, what is evidence, what is credible, what is valid, and some of the ways that we've been trained to understand the meanings of those, we might have to unlearn some things. So there'll be some of that happening over our 6 weeks together. There are so many tools and assessments and exercises available on the web, and we want to make sure that you leave with some useful tools for the work that you're doing, whether it's a racial equity impact analysis, whether it's, thinking about the five whys and getting to root cause analysis, fishbone exercise, the hidden bias exercise. There's so many. So we want to make sure that over the 6 weeks, we are directing you to some of these very useful tools that are available. Again, we want you to be prepped to how do I have conversations with funders? How do I respond to an RFP or to a funding announcement? If I want to write a proposal or pitch a study that is embedding racial equity, what does that look like? One thing I think is going to be really helpful is thinking about project management and budgeting. They don't often teach us in our doctoral programs. We're learning our content. But when you get out and you're doing work in a research organization, these are the skills that you need to think about is how do I manage this project? How do I think about the budgeting of time and the staffing of a project? So we want to make sure that you leave feeling like you have some awareness of what to do with that and you're not just thrown out there after getting your degree. And then there's a lot to be said about just equity and how we communicate our findings. And so we'll spend some time thinking about equitable communication guidelines. What are the things that we don't want to say? How do we want to present our information when we are talking about racial disparities? Um, so that we are not disguising or not, trying to hide that racial disparities exist, but how do we talk about it in a way that is still strength-based? Um, so those are some of the topics that we'll cover um, in our 6 weeks together. And this is not meant to be a full list. I just wanted to give you a flavor of what this includes. All right. Thinking about what are you getting out of this program? One, we're really going to emphasize kind of this peer learning environment and establishing a cohort. And so, hoping that you will leave this 6 weeks with some relationships of others that are also committed to advancing racial equity in their work. We hope that you will be leaving with an understanding of racial equity principles and what they are, but also practicing and doing that application of the principles. So it takes it from this kind of abstract, yeah, that sounds good, to the operationalizing. Well, what does that mean I'm going to do any differently if I do this principle? What does that look like in action? You are going to leave with this personalized racial equity action plan, which is specific to you and your work going forward. Um, we want you to leave with a toolkit, right? We want you to have some things in your belt, in your back pocket of resources, some new skill sets to approach the work. Again, wanting you to see what it looks like to work inside an applied research environment outside of the university. And then we offering a very generous stipend of $10,000 for completing the program. Um, so just in you see there's an asterisk there. Just want to underscore a few things. One, it's intentionally a generous amount because we know that there will be tax implications for accepting that amount, and so we want to make sure that it's not that's not an additional burden that you're seeking, but you are still feeling that your time was valued and that you are rewarded, but that you are not that we are conscious of the tax implications of receiving a stipend of this amount. Um, and secondly, we are trying to offset, right? We know that this is your summer, and there are many ways that you can spend your summer in advancing your data collection or depending on what stage you are in your program. So we want to make sure that we are thoughtful about a dollar amount that would honor that time that you are committing to this work. Um, it will be so if you have any other questions about that, we can talk about. Someone asked, Elizabeth answered. I'm just about to talk about the application process. And she's right. The cohort is going to consist of three to five associates. So, who should apply? This program is really designed for folks who are currently in their doctoral program and ideally have made their way through kind of a couple of years, a minimum of 2 years of their studies, of their coursework. We don't have a specific um, major, specific, content area that you need to be focusing on in your doctoral program, but we're thinking we have a slight preference for those who have kind of finished some of their coursework, maybe if they've completed their comprehensive exams. That's not a requirement, but it'll be helpful for you to walk in with some of that already having content, already having some methodology explained to you that'll help you in this program. We're really intentional about wanting to have a cohort that brings that diversity to the table, right? And in so doing, we're specifically seeking those that have had lived experiences where they've had to encounter or experience some sort of discrimination. And maybe that was in your educational pathway, in your career, just throughout your life. Thinking about those diverse lived experiences that you have encountered around racial discrimination is the diverse voices and perspectives we want at the table. So those are the types of candidates that we're really hoping will apply. We want folks that are interested in thinking about this application around equity and social justice and thinking about what it looks like to work outside of the university. It's not really designed for this is what it looks like to be a professor. This is designed for what it looks like to apply your knowledge, apply that lived expertise in the world of trying to advance social justice. And then lastly, Chicago based, right? We are going to have these two mandatory in-person events. We're not offering a travel stipend. We want to, think that we're creating a cohort beyond the 6 weeks. So it's important that there's some locality that you are closely connected so that you can maintain that peer network beyond this time together and that you can get to us for those in-person sessions. And then the application process. Um, so there is an online application form that you'll start to complete. I think we can probably drop that in the chat, and you may already have it. If you were invited to this webinar, I think it was in the email with the webinar. But this is the link that would take you to the application. You will upload a CV. We want a very, very short narrative, less than 200 words. How do you intend to use your PhD? That's what we're hoping you will tell us in 200 words or less for that brief narrative. And then lastly, we want to hear from you. So we're asking for a very short video, no more than 3 minutes in length. You can use your cell phone and upload the video. Just you can use Zoom and record yourself and upload a video, whatever works. But this is just an opportunity to introduce yourself and really just describe your equity why. Everyone who enters and stays in equity work does so for a reason. And so we're really interested in hearing from you about what is your why? What is your equity why? So, short video that introduces yourself and describes that. Um, we are collecting applications through the 23rd, so another 3 weeks. We'll continue to accept applications. And then once we have called through applications, finalists will be selected for a Zoom 30-minute interview. And then we will be finalizing that pool down to 3 to 5 associates that we will actually choose. And we hope to make our decisions no later than end of the month, end of March.